I will be first to say the word ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is a terrible name. Mm-hmm. I think many of us in the field understand that. It just denotes that something is wrong. And we know that so many kids, so we know so many kids have this disorder or condition, but how can it be a disorder if it's that big of a statistic, right? I mean, it's more of a variance. So it is a learning difference. And I think that, first of all, I want to just come on the show to say, if you know you have ADHD or someone you love has ADHD, there is nothing wrong with you, right? We just have to learn how to work with our brains and unlock that potential. We're unique, right? So I just wanted to make sure to say that. But ADHD and ADD, I've heard you say that. We do not say ADD anymore. It's just all ADHD. But in clinical, we do characterize it as either hyperactive impulsive, inattentive, or combined type presentation.
Right. Sure.
Well, I love the way that you framed that up, because for me, going back, 45 years to grade school or days, it reminds me that so many of my cohort were treated like get into the corner, put on the dunce cap. There's a problem with you. We have to, manage that problem. But meanwhile, they probably were mistreated, and if anything, may have had a superpower. I mean, that's how we're kind of now addressing ADHD when it's managed properly and effectively through behavioral sciences.
Sure. So another side of that, and just sort of looking at current day, so many children with that diagnosis. As you said, it's not a correct diagnosis. It's not an inclusive. It's not a broad. It doesn't, denote understanding the condition properly.
Yes.
But so many, children and parents are then just faced with the option of medicating children. That's the number one sort of reflex these days by most pediatricians, I would say. So to come at this from a different viewpoint, where you're looking at behavior, you're looking at what can be changed, what can be educated, what can be learned, could you give us, because it's a very unusual path, in my experience, I've not met very many pediatricians doing what you're doing.
Right.
So could you just give us a little background of how you entered this field, how you learned what you learned, and how you're able to help children from this perspective?
Yeah, I think I was drawn to this field, in my training in San Diego, and really, we go through all the different parts of pediatric training to see where we really like to work with those families. And I always really love doing bread and butter general pediatrics, really establishing that foundation and relationship and watching kids develop and thrive over the years. And, I think one of the biggest things as parents, I'm a parent of 2 children who are now teenagers, but really trying to help support families understand what's happening, right? And to really support that family as a unit, even though the family is coming in to see me for the child, I am really trying to educate and support the whole family, because the child doesn't live in a vacuum, right? So I think the biggest thing when it comes to ADHD, behavioral health, mental health, is really understanding that mental wellness is really a continuum, right? And so we really need to focus on understanding and educating what goes into helping promote resilience, helping promote social, emotional competence, and seeing where that child is at any stage of their development, and then helping, because parents play a pivotal role in this. They provide the executive function that the child doesn't have yet, right? But that parent may also have ADHD.
I was going to ask you, does it run in families?
Right. Yes, it really does.
Yeah.
It really does. They often say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Yeah. However, it's really important as the pediatrician monitoring and observing what's happening in that room, I can come in and model a lot of those things, how to interact with that child, how to comment on the strengths that I see, so that it's not all about what's wrong with you, what's well with you.
Right.
Right?
And so in terms of working with children, from what ages, the age groups that you work with most, and how long do you work with them for?
Yes, so in my practice, I typically see kids anywhere from 2 to 20 now, and I just focus exclusively on ADHD, anxiety, depression, and parenting issues throughout the lifespan.
And how long do you tend to work with the child and the family and the parents to see those changes happening?
Yes, I mean, it kind of depends where they enter in, right? I think my goal is whenever they come to see me, they're either in crisis or something has been brewing for a while. So I come in to kind of see the big picture, understand what's happening, what are the risk factors and protective factors, and then come in and sort of help educate from the get-go what's going on. And then some of the families will decide what they want to do. And I think it's a collaborative process, right? I, of course, as a traditionally trained physician, I do introduce medication, but I am one to say medication is just one tool in the toolbox, and it's not a magic bullet. I often tell kids that medicine, when done correctly, is gas for a car. Like your brain is like the car. And, you know, when you put medicine, you have the right medicine on board, it just helps to make things run smoother, but it still needs the driver. It still needs you.
Sure.
You're the one making all the choices.
I love to think of this as a metaphor where the medication in some instances serves as a raft or a bridge over rough waters, gets you from point A to point B, allows the framework and you as a physician to deal with the family and help manage them, bring them back, and perhaps get off the medication, or maybe not. Sometimes it's necessary lifelong. I want to take a quick tangent, though, because I've seen you present this slide a few times. And really what you're driving home here is by the end of the first year of life, a child's brain is about 70% of the adult's size. First year of life. And by 5 years, a child's brain is 90% of the adult size. So you said this a little bit earlier. But here's what I wanted to ask, because I get it that clinically you're treating families as you should. You're seeing them as young as 2. But does this start in utero? Could this actually start, you know, as the baby is forming? And if so, how? What does the literature say?
In terms of?
ADHD predisposition.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's really important for families to understand that it's not nature versus nurture.
Right.
It's both of those things, right? I mean, the brain is going through so much development and pruning, and so it's really critical, the first 7-8 years of life, what is happening not just genetically, but also in that child's environment and how we interact with our children. The serve and return between the parent and the child really helps strengthen neural pathways that then help in critical child development. And what happens in those first several years of life can really impact the lifespan, mental health and physical health wellness later.
And part of the reason I even asked that is because you're seeing this aftermath, if you will.
Yes.
I wanted to draw off your expertise for a minute, Dr. Murray, because when you're recommending nutrition and certain even supplementation in utero, a new mom, what are the kinds of things that you're recommending that immediately, almost in the literature at least support, offsets the predisposition to a child with these genetics? Because we know that exists. What are those things?
So, great question. So that's where we leap from genetics to epigenetics.
Right.
What can we do from the outside to help the inside? Yeah. And in my experience, really, there's 2 things to really look at, to consider for any parent, family dealing with this. One is there anything in the body and the brain that shouldn't be there? That's irritating, causing inflammation, causing some malfunction. So number 1, identify if there's anything in there that shouldn't be there and that's interfering with natural growth and development and function. Number 2, then look at, in terms of supplements, what are the nutrients? What is the brain growing from? What is the brain made of? When we look at that, we see 50% of the brain is fats and oils. It's a fats and oils machine. That's why.
Or fatheads.
Yeah. So your analogy of gas, the petrol in the car, fats and oils are the gas and the petrol for the brain. And 50% of that 50% is all one fatty acid, DHA, the omega-3 fatty acid, DHA, found in fish, cod, liver oil, things like that. So we know that's what's required to build a good machine, to build the right equipment, to build the right thing that's going to work for the rest of our life. So DHA, we know things like phosphatidylserine, choline, these things that help neurotransmitter function and transmission are also very important. And then all the macronutrients, all the essential vitamins and all the essential minerals are also critical for this, and especially the B vitamins to function properly. So the brain connecting to the rest of the body through the vagus nerve, look at that. That's what's conducting. And that's where we dive a little deeper from the brain connection with the vagus nerve into the microbiome and the microbiome brain connection as well. So when we look at all of those things, that's when we, from a sort of functional integrative point of view, can see, can a child help, be benefited by some of these other approaches and supplementation at the same time as doing the real groundwork.
And so, and that's pivotal information for new moms and even moms that may have their first expressing, at an early age, ADHD. And I know we all hate the pigeonholed clinical diagnostics, and they're wanting to do everything they possibly can to make sure that their baby's being fed.
Yeah.
Right news. It does start in utero. From a clinical perspective, if we could go over to what areas at an early age, perhaps before really what the literature suggests is clinically diagnosable, the differential anyways around, is there scanning or imaging that we can do? Are there genetic tests that we can do? Are there behavioral tests that we can look at? And again, in that very young age, 0 to 2 or 3, are there identifiable markers, bloodborne? What can moms out there do or families do to assess and address at early ages?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And really, clinically in mainstream, there's nothing to formally image or blood work to do. I often tell parents that when it comes to behavioral and mental health conditions, there is not a blood test or an imaging study. It's more that, when I meet kids, I tell them for the first time, I'm like, I'm a doctor who doesn't do shots, but I also am more like a detective because I need to listen carefully to what the story is, what the context is, to really understand what's happening at home and school, so that I don't jump to conclusions. I listen to all the facts, and we sort of try to understand what is that function of that behavior to really understand what is happening in that child's environment.
That's great. From a functional point of view, there are a few things that we can look at in terms of helping to identify if there's anything external, interfering with how things are functioning. So at that young age, hair analysis, one method we can do, very, very good for screening minerals and metals. Stool analysis is another one that can be done at a very young age to look at the microbiome, see if there's anything we can do there to help improve. And then number 3, there's a few labs now who do saliva testing for, external plastics, pesticides, external chemicals. That can also just give us an idea if there's anything in there that we could help with.